Candice was told whether she calls for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, or even if no one answers, she'll be charged.
But the work hasn't been done. Don't tell me you have a contract.
All right.
Annie's card might be cancelled if she doesn't pay up. Annie! Yay!
Great to be back. Your complaints have started rolling in. We're kicking off with one that'll have you rushing to check your phone bills.
We all know the more time you spend on the phone, the bigger your bill is.
But what if nobody answers your call, or if the line's engaged? You don't pay, do you? Do you? Tonight's callers reckon they do.
Okay. See you later. We all like to keep in touch, check out what that special person's up to. And the quickest way to do that, as we all know, is the telephone. And these days, it's so easy. You press a few numbers and you're away.
Now, Candice Foster, like me, doesn't hesitate to grab the phone to quickly get in touch. Her speed dial is programmed to her husband, Tony.
Now, Tony and Candice have this little code. Candice calls Tony's phone for a couple of seconds. He doesn't answer. This tells Tony he needs to call her at home. Cute.
Well, it may be cute, but it's a really important part of the story. You'll see why later. First off, the main reason they use this little code?
It saves us at least $20 a week in phone calls because he's on a flat rate.
Even though Candice rings and hangs up before Tony answers the call, as it turns out, it hasn't always been saving them any money. Candice turned detective on her Telecom bill and noticed something odd.
It wasn't for about 2 years, actually, that I started seeing a lot of 1-minute calls to Tony, and I thought, I don't call him for a minute. He did not pick up the call. I only phoned long enough to show my number.
This is Candice's bill. Telecom's minimum charge for a mobile phone call is a minute. Candice was told whether she calls for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 8 seconds, or even if no one answers, she'll be charged. If it's rung, you'll be stung.
I mean, surely when you look at the Goods and Services Act and Fair Trading Act, you are paying for a service which is to connect and talk to a person that you're not receiving.
And it's not just calls to mobiles you can have problems with. Yep, it's overseas calls as well.
84-year-old Harry Rosenberg is also having problems with Telecom, but with his international calls. Well, the overseas calls Harry's wife, Prima, makes.
So, Harry, I hear you go through your bills with a fine-tooth comb.
Yes, I have to. I get charged for calls that I didn't make. Well, I did make, but they were either engaged or no reply.
Where are the 1 minutes there?
No, there's the... here we are, down here. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute.
So what did Telecom say to you, Harry?
They argue with me about it wasn't the answering machine that answered. I said, no. Was it a fax? No, no fax. It was just nobody home, or it was busy. The trouble is that Telecom tells me when I argue with them about it, they said, well, the countries charge Telecom for the call, so they charge me for the call. I mean, I don't believe that, but that's what they tell me.
Harry tells us 5 times in the last year he's eventually been credited by Telecom for international calls that went unanswered. But Harry's not a happy customer.
I mean, I'd sooner be on my computer than instead of having to argue with them. I hate arguments. I mean, you know, I shouldn't have to do that.
And neither should Hamish Spencer from Dunedin, who faxes letters from his computer all over the world, which in effect is still a phone call.
I started getting these enormous bills, very big bills, hundreds of dollars. And I rang Telecom and they admitted that they hadn't gone through, the calls had not gone through, and they would cancel the charges. But last year they said, no more, we're not going to do this anymore, you're going to be charged for these calls. And I don't think you ought to pay for calls that don't go through. Telecom says they connect, but I don't think connecting is listening to a busy tone. I don't want to pay $2 every time I listen to a busy tone.
I'd like them to stop charging for that. I think unless you speak to the person, you're paying for a service you're not receiving. It's not fair.
I don't mind paying for when I can talk to somebody, but when I get a busy signal or no reply, I don't want to have to pay for that.
We agree. We reckon you'll be checking your phone bills now.
That's for sure, Kev. Now, we are talking about calls that are unanswered or engaged, and you get charged for them.
So what does Telecom say about this? There's been a range of responses. First, the unofficial responses.
Now, we have been to Telecom's customer service line, and now I didn't say I was from Fair Go, but I wanted to know as a customer if I'd be charged for unanswered phone calls. This is just a query. I'm just wondering if you're calling from a residential landline to a mobile or an international call, if the call isn't answered, does Telecom charge you anything?
Only if there's a connection made, e.g. if there's an answering machine that picks up.
Okay, so there's no circumstances where Telecom would charge you a minute from calling from like your landline to a mobile phone if no one answers?
Only if the answering machine picks up, then you will get charged a minute, but if there's no answering machine on there, then no, you wouldn't.
And that includes international calls as well?
That's correct.
No charge?
Yeah, unless there's a connection made.
Okay, thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Bye.
See ya.
We're just having a bit of discussion here in the office about, we're wondering whether from a residential landline, if you're calling an overseas number or a mobile, do you actually get charged even if the call isn't answered or it's engaged? Does Telecom charge you?
Just for just dialing the mobile.
Yeah, and it's ringing.
And it's ringing.
But no one answers.
You do. On the mobile, you do.
Oh, you do get charged. So
That's
as soon
right,
as it starts ringing, you're being charged.
Yes. Yeah.
And what about international calls then?
To a landline or?
Yeah, just to an overseas landline number. Yeah.
No. You only get charged for overseas calls if it goes to an answering service. I'm talking about
if someone
landline.
answers it, yeah.
Now, someone answer it or it goes to an answering service.
Right, so you are charged if you call a mobile, but not for a landline.
Not for a landline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
Contradictory responses. You sure you didn't just strike somebody that didn't know what they were talking about?
Well, I did think that, Kev. So I did call 2 more times and I still got the same mixed response. On the one hand, they said, yes, I would be charged. If the mobile was ringing, I would be charged. And on the other hand, they said, no, you won't be charged. So I don't know.
We were confused, so we asked Telecom to join us to clear things up. Now is a good time to tell you that this season we have a special deal to make Fair Go even fairer. If you come into the studio and you sit here to give your side of the story, we won't interrupt you for the first minute of your interview. The minute will be ticking away here. It's all yours to present your case. Then we ask our questions. So we put this offer to Telecom, a full interview with a free minute. We wouldn't even bill them for it. They still refused to come in.
So they sent us a written statement instead.
Telecom stresses it doesn't charge. That's doesn't charge for calls that are unanswered or engaged. And they reckon their customer service people must have misunderstood our question. They say in all tonight's cases, all calls were answered.
As for each caller, Telecom says with Candice's short ring system, the call may have been picked up just as Candice was hanging up. And they say Candice's husband may have inadvertently answered the call. He just didn't realise he had. As for Harry's international calls, Telecom says foreign phone systems occasionally cut off calls in error the moment they're connected. That's why Harry was charged for these brief connections, but later refunded. As for Hamish's faxes, same thing. Foreign phone systems can be unreliable. Telecom say a fax may be connected briefly, then the call's lost. But the call's technically answered, so Hamish is charged. Telecom stresses Hamish has always been credited when he's queried the charges.
Well, Candice, Harry and Hamish have come into our studios. What did you think of Telecom's response, Candice?
Rubbish. There's no way Tony would pick up the phone. There's no point. Defeats the whole purpose of me calling.
You don't go along with this line that he could be inadvertently picking up the calls?
No, not at all.
Harry, what about this thing about the foreign exchanges cutting off your calls by accident?
It has never happened. The phone rings, it doesn't answer, I hang up. If it's engaged, I dial again, redial, push the redial button, sometimes making a call twice in the 1 minute, and yet I get charged for 2 calls in 1 minute.
And you don't hear any clicks or anything like that being clicked off?
No, no noise whatsoever.
Hamish, you're down there in Dunedin. You would have also heard those responses. Your reaction?
Well, I think it's pathetic. I know the calls weren't answered. I can hear them ringing. You know the calls weren't answered. Even the fax program on my computer knows the calls weren't answered.
But Telecom say the records show that your calls were answered.
Well, they weren't.
They say they were.
Well, they clearly weren't.
OK, right. Well, they're not convinced, these guys, that's obvious.
Well, to get to the bottom of this, we need your help. If you reckon you've been billed for calls that weren't answered or got engaged a signal, let us know. Check your phone bills, log your calls. If you see anything odd, post the bill into us.
Telecom must already make buckets of dough out of calls connecting to answer phones. We can't let them start charging for calls that don't even connect. Thanks for coming in, guys. After the break, who the hell built this?
Thank you very much. We've just got to remortgage.
Yeah, we've remortgaged.
No problem.
Stone walls are supposed to last decades, not days. An Auckland couple have knocked their new wall down. They were so concerned it might kill someone. Have a look at this.
The concrete just crumbles off. I mean, I'm not a Superman, but you sure as hell shouldn't be able to do that to concrete. I mean, that is a joke. That is an absolute joke, and that is all that's holding this wall up. It's a danger to anyone who's mentally sane. It's bowing, it's collapsing under its own weight. It's not finished. We've been told it's unsafe.
And I'm at home and with Jacinta, our 3-year-old daughter. We can't play in our section. This wall is coming down around us. If one of these rocks hit her, she would be dead.
The man responsible for Matt and Diane's Dodgy wall is Fokete Losei of Auckland, sometimes known as Fokete Pulieku, or even Losei Fokete. And the Harrises aren't the only ones having problems.
We wanted this, but this is what we got.
Here we go again. This time we're at the Sings. More money spent, more disappointment, and a huge pile of rubble on the front lawn. It's not hard to spot the handiwork of Fokete Losei.
We have had sleepless nights thinking what to do next, you know, how do we replace that money and how do we get rid of this mess or finish the fence off.
And it's not a small problem. We're talking 6 or 7 tons of rock, not to mention the cost.
It makes me very angry. I mean, we paid hard-earned money that we saved for a very long time to have a beautiful fence around our house.
OK, so how could things go so horribly wrong? First things first, they got a quote from stonemason Fokete Losei.
We saw some of his work and we thought, wow, OK, our fence is going to look great.
But then Fokete asked them for a deposit of $6,000. Now remember, that's half the quote. Did you pay it?
Yes, we didn't feel very comfortable about it. We were worried. Fokete made it quite clear that that was the standard practice in the industry.
Then they waited for the work to start.
And waited and waited.
Eventually Fokete Losei did show up, but he didn't do much until...
He came and dropped off some of the rocks, but he never came back again, and I'm still waiting.
And now the things just feel like they're talking to a brick wall. This looks like a great wall, and it is. Fokete Losei didn't build it though. He did take a deposit of $1,500 off the Jansons.
It's rustic.
But that was about all he did.
So not only
back to the Harrises, they ended up handing over 11 grand for their stone wall. The wall that was so unsafe, you guessed it, they had to fork out even more money to get the whole lot pulled down.
Thank you very much. We've just got to remortgage.
Yeah, we've remortgaged
No
because of
problems.
you.
Come round tomorrow for a barbecue. For someone who's supposedly religious, I don't know where the hell your morals come from, mate.
He's definitely not capable of running a business. He has got no shame.
Seriously, Kev, if I had one rock for every person that's had a bad experience with this guy, I could start a wall around my place. We've had about 12 people contact us on this.
Well, time to see what Whakiri Lassi has to say. Fairgo had some photos to show him too. We caught up with him visiting the Sings.
Whakiri, hi. Mary Jane from the Fair Go program at TVNZ.
Okay.
I think you know why we're here.
Yes.
What's the story with these fences?
Well, we asked him that we're going to finish up the job.
Going to finish it up 6 months later. I've got some other photos to show you, actually. What about Matt and Diane Harris's fence?
Yep.
They paid you $11,000 for this. Let's have a look at it. That looks like Harper Beach. They've got a young child and they had to get their fence pulled down because it was so unsafe. What are you going to do for them?
No, that's not the true story.
Well, it is the true story, and I've got photos to prove it if you'd like to have a look at them. There's not even any concrete in there. How is that a fence, a stone wall?
So what do you want me to do?
Well, I actually would like you to give these people their money back. Come with me and let's have a look at this fence. They don't want you to rebuild this fence.
I promise these people I will finish their wall. It's taking a bit longer than what I thought, but I'm coming to see them to sort this out, because actually that's the only way to just to work on this.
This has been 6 months, this wall here. I think it's time they got their money back, don't you think?
Yeah. I don't think they will have their money back.
Oh, I think they'd quite
We have
like it.
spent a lot of money on doing the situation where we are.
So what are you going to do for the things? What are you going to do
Just to
for these
finish
people?
the wall.
Hi. Whakiri's got a deal he wants to offer you.
Yes. Mr. Singh.
What is the deal?
Hi, Sima. The deal is, just get me 3 weeks to finish up to the standard of your happiness. I can't return the money.
Why can't you return the money?
I have used the money that you gave me to pay the ticker, to pay the material that come into the site.
How can we trust you? I mean, look at those, water leaking. We've got Waikato City Council on our back. There's no show from you from last September for Kite.
Yes.
We've been facing everyone, and you want us to believe that in 3 weeks you'll have it all done?
Okay, so you're saying no deal, they want their money back.
I don't have it.
We'll be following this up for Kitty.
Take this to the
It's
program.
not, it's not good enough to keep doing this to people. Now, if you think I was a bit hard on Whakiti, please don't. We've had a number of you contact us about him. A couple rang me just the other day and they've paid him 20 grand. That's right, 20 grand. Now, that's a lot of money in anyone's terms.
All up, we've heard from upset people who've given Whakiri Lassi more than $50,000 and they've precious little in return. If you've lost dough, let's know about it. Thanks, MJ. Coming up, a credit card that won't take the hint.
How dare you bill me for charges I have never agreed to?
If you're a credit card user, you probably fall into one of two categories. Those who use it wisely and pay on time, and those whose relationship with their cards love-hate. Love spending the money, hate paying the debt.
That old love-hate thing, I'm afraid that's me. Guilty. I'd also like to add a third category. The person who hasn't asked for a credit card, doesn't want a credit card, isn't using a credit card, but somehow still gets charged for one.
Annie Simmons is a consultant teacher who specialises in learning difficulties, so she's used to dealing with problems.
Annie's no slouch in the maths department either. She knows how to work out tricky stuff like interest rates and percentages.
Now, you have to be careful, Hannah, particularly with those credit cards that you haven't signed up for and never asked for.
It's true. Last November, Annie got this bill from American Express. $40 in credit card charges, including a $20 late fee. But hang on, Annie doesn't have an Amex card.
Over the years, I've had lots of junk mail from them, and I get a lot of telephone calls from them trying to sell me an American Express card, and I've always told them I'm not interested.
So Annie faxed Amex to say cease and desist. Just a lovely, gentle little nudge.
I have never had an American Express card. I do not ever wish to have an American Express card. I have not ever spent any money on an American Express card. How dare you bill me for charges I have never agreed to?
Well, hey, that probably should have done it, but no. A month later, Annie gets another bill from Amex. And this time, another $20 late fee brings the total from $40 to $60. Furious, Annie again tells Amex to sort it.
I'm really shocked that a company that has the public esteem, I guess, of a company like American Express, and they can get it this wrong.
So the first bill arrived in early November, the second bill comes in early December, and then in late December, Annie gets a letter, a demand from Amex, and now it's their turn to be blunt. They say that they're concerned that the amount is now 60 days overdue, and they warn, that Annie's card might be cancelled if she doesn't pay up. Annie! Yay! So, yay, well, that's great, you know, result in one way. It also means that if they did that, you might have a problem with your credit rating.
Yes, I was really concerned about what it would do to my credit rating.
So Annie was back on the fax and the phone to Amex. This time, though, she says she used the magic words lawyer and fair go. It worked.
So Amex agreed to reverse the credit card charges and cancel the card.
The card that I never agreed to and never wanted.
And Amex had also figured out that this had all started way back in 2001 when they sent Annie a credit card application pack and a credit card with her name on it. And that's the card they've been billing her for. But she told them back then she didn't want it.
He said, right, what you do is you don't sign it, you just cut it up into pieces and put it in the bin, which is exactly what I did. And that was, as I say, September 2001. And then this happens 3 years later.
In this letter then, the one that you finally got from Amex, they do say that they genuinely apologise for the level of service they gave you. What more do you want?
I certainly feel like I've been a very little cog, an inconsequential little piece of dust under their fingernails.
And?
I'd like to know how they can make this mistake, how this mistake happened. I'd like to know that it's not going to happen again to me or to anybody else.
Whatever she was on, I want some.
It's called rage, Kevin, that's what it was.
Yeah, well, we took Annie's questions and her rage to American Express and we said, all very well being genuinely apologetic. How about coughing up with Annie's legal fees and some compensation? What was their response, Hannah?
Well, the gist of it was that Amex sincerely apologises, deeply regrets the time, the inconvenience and any distress caused by their actions, yada, yada, yada. OK, here's a bit of a summary. Annie Simmons shouldn't have been sent or been billed for an American Express credit card. Amex got it wrong, their telemarketing company got it wrong, human error was to blame. Amex says, and I paraphrase here, that the humans who made the errors are being dealt with. And finally, Amex says it has escalation processes in place which should have seen this sorted out without lawyers or fair go. Which is kind of weird because this situation was certainly escalating and not a hell of a lot was happening to fix it. But I just heard yesterday from Annie that Amex have come to the party with a bit of compo. So she's kind of pleased that she came to us instead of waiting for those escalation processes to kick in.
Good on you, Annie. This is one of those stories where you did everything right and Amex did everything wrong. Finally tonight, we've got 35 shows ahead of us, so keep your complaints coming in. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Good night.